other party reciprocally also has been taking the same attitude. So this issue cannot be settled as far as just the claims are concerned. This is why Allah repeatedly in the Holy Quran tells us that it is Allah, for Allah only to decide. So when it is left to Allah to Allah to decide, then who on earth has the authority to make his decision final in this world? He may opine on this subject, he may express his view in this regard, but he cannot make a final declaration of judgment, following which the punishment should also be meted out. They are two different things altogether. Every man is free to consider another person to be in the wrong. There is no doubt about it. No compulsion in religion also comprises this. That if you consider another person's religion to be wrong, you have a right to declare it to be wrong. No harm. But having declared it to be wrong, to go to the extent of punishing the person for the wrongs you claim he has committed, that is what you have not committed. That is left to Allah alone. That is in principle the teaching of the Holy Quran, which has been spread all over the pages of the Holy Quran in so many ways, sometimes by way of demonstrations of great battles between falsehood and truth, sometimes by making such universal declarations that I just quoted, and so on. Now here, one of the arguments of the opponents of prophets is debated in this verse, which the argument which has been debated in this verse, which I am going to read, is the argument that the majority must be held in the right and the minority must be wrong. The Holy Quran tells us, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ بِالْحَقِّ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا لَا مُبَدِّلَ لِكَلِمَاتِهِ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ إِنْ يَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ وَإِنْهُمْ إِلَّا يَخْرُصُونَ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ أَعْلَمُ مَنْ يُضِلُّ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِالْمُهْتَدِينَ. Al-An'am 116-118. And the word of thy Lord has been fulfilled in truth and justice. None can change his words, and he is the all-hearing, all-knowing. And if thou obey the majority of those on earth, they will lead thee astray from Allah's way. Now there goes the argument of majority overvote. The contrary is concluded, not the claim that is made by the people who follow the majority, but the contrary to their claim is concluded in this verse. It is declared to be the right thing. The Holy Prophet is addressed and warned against the majority. They said that if you follow the majority, you will surely be led astray. Today they are forcing this upon us with the argument, their own views upon us with the argument that we hold the majority, so you must follow the majority. Look at the audacity of one of the central ministers of Pakistan, who recently issued a statement trying to convince Ahmadis of the logic of their case. The words used were very mild, and apparently mild, I should say, because the threats implied were very severe. He made the declaration that, look here, when the majority has already given a declaration against you, has passed this resolution against you that you are not Muslims. So why don't you accept the majority rule, the majority ruling? You are left with no choice but to accept and concede to this majority decision and start behaving like non-Muslims. This is the ultimate conclusion he is drawn. Imagine. He says, no harm of you. As simple as that, We have declared, because we are in majority, we have a right to declare anything. The this, and this is as simple and as logical as that. This is an age of democracy. You follow it and start behaving like Muslims instead of declaring that Allah is one and there is no partner besides Allah, and the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, is his servant and his prophet. You start declaring, because we have declared you as non-Muslim, that Allah is not one, He is so many. And the Holy Prophet of Islam is not his servant and is not a true prophet. If you say that, then we will have nothing against you. We will let you live in peace. But if you declare that Islam is right, that the fundamental article of Muslim faith is right, that if Allah is one, and that Allah is one and there is no partner beside Him, then we will kill you, and then we will destroy you, then we will have every justification to oppose you in whatever manner we choose. Now this is the statement of the so-called central minister. Now, he himself has in fact revealed his own attitude towards religion. Another implication of this statement is that if we were in a country where the majority would tell us to renounce Islam and to reject the Holy Prophet Islam, we would definitely do it, because the majority has a right to do it. So this is the warning given to us sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this case, that if you obey the wishes of the majority, you would certainly be led astray. Had that warning not been given to us previously in the Holy Quran, we might have, of course we will not, but still there would be a chance, a very remote chance, of being led astray by these people. But here is the clear warning of Allah in the Holy Quran, and that addressed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no less a person than he himself. If he himself, following the dictates of majority, will not be saved, then how lesser men like us can be saved from the wrath of Allah? Again, so many scores of verses were chosen by me and left before I came, because there were too many, and yet there are still so many here in my hand, claiming to be, made known to you. Yes, one little bit was left when I recited the verse from من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها. The last bit was left without explanation. وما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا. The subject being discussed is that no ideology can be forced with the help of force upon anyone. This is the general declaration of the Holy Quran, made in so many places, in so many ways, varying forces. And having declared that La Taziru Waziratu Wizra Ukhra, no soul shall bear the burden of another soul, or will be answerable for the acts of another soul. The Holy Quran tells us, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. We do not show our wrath upon the people, we do not punish the people. This is an unchangeable law of Allah, that we do not punish the people unless we have raised a prophet. Now this is apparently relevant to this, because previously something else was being discussed. It was said that coercion will not lead to anything, will be of no avail. And ultimately, a threat of coercion is mentioned in the end here. See, that is the issue which has to be sorted out before we proceed further. When I read again, whoever is led to the right path is led to the right path for his own sake. Whoever is led astray is led astray for his own detriment. Nobody would be answerable for every person's sins and so on. What is the relationship between this declaration and the previous? That we do not punish people without raising prophets. The fact is that, number one, this has been declared that although you are not permitted to punish others because of doctrinal differences, Allah has the right to punish. And the punishment will be meted out, of course, to the wrongdoers. Not that they will be permitted to go scot-free, but it would be in the hands of Allah. He would exercise that right to punish, and no human being would be permitted to do that. That is one declaration. Number two, this declaration means that force will still not lead people to the right path. This will be a punishment not to force the issue, but a punishment as a reward to their past misbehavior and misconduct. Still they will not be led to the right path, even if Allah uses force. This is the ultimate argument. Even Allah's punishment will not lead people to the right path. That punishment will only be a sign of their total and ultimate rejection, and nothing more. So force is completely powerless to change the views of people. Now this subject is carried further into the life after death by the Holy Quran, and it is said that when they will see the last chastisement, the last punishment, they will say, now we have begun to see. You see? Now we understand. So you return us to our previous life, and you will see we will be reformed people. Allah tells them, no. Not even this punishment. This final punishment can lead you to the right path. Because if we return you to the same, knowing what is in store for you, you will still behave crookedly and wrongly as you previously did. So force and righteousness, force and conviction are never to meet. They are totally opposed to each other. They belong to antipodes. They can never get together. East and West can get together to some platform, but not the force and conviction. In fact, force creates a reaction against truth, not in favor of truth. Yes, I know that, but this is another subject. I have only taken that bit of this verse which applies to this discussion. The rest I left out because it's a different topic. This verse also has so many other meanings. So you want me to start discussing this verse as it is, you know? I'm following a certain line of argument, and only a part of this verse's meanings apply to that line of argument. So I should suffice myself with the discussion of that much which concerns this discussion and leave the rest alone for the time being. Right? If so permitted. I know you are very enthusiastic, you do it, for the sake of sharing the beauty of the Holy Quran as you see it with the rest of us. That is the only reason why you are suggesting this. the Holy Quran tells us that because they had ultimately decided to take recourse to force, so they have left us no choice but to take recourse to force. Not with the same objective as they came, but with the objective of destroying them and wiping them out of the face of the earth. وقال الذين كفروا لرسلهم لنخرجنكم من أرضنا أو لتعودن في ملتنا فأوحى إليهم ربهم لنهلكن الظالمين. Because they are wrongdoers who want to use force against you, have decided to use force against you, so we have decided to annihilate them, and that is what we are going to do. Now, to remind you of what is happening in Pakistan, I'll just quote from what General Ziaul Haq Sahib declared once against Ahmadis. He said, in the last few years, in particular, the government of Pakistan has taken several stringent administrative and legal measures to prevent the Qadianism from masquerading as Muslims. The government took all these stringent measures. In reality, what he is saying is this, that we took all the possible stringent measures we could take to stop the spread of Ahmadism, and we have failed. Force has failed. We will, inshallah. Imagine, inshallah, what are you using, inshallah? And also, he has destroyed himself by using inshallah. Allah will never so way. When I read this way, I can't stop laughing. What is the use of inshallah? Instead, he should have learned from Imran Khan and use the word uninshallah. It was a new phrase coined by Imran Khan, son of Dr. Saeed from, your family, your friend. Once he wanted to tell me something which he did not want to happen, He was returning home and he did not want to return home. So he said, of course, at last I am returning home, but uninshallah. They don't allow it. So what General Zia Sahib should have used was the word uninshallah. But he has not the wisdom of an empty child. So we will, quote unquote, inshallah, persevere in our effort to ensure that the cancer of Qadianism is exterminated. Now this is the language he used, and this is the language which has been used before him by other people like Pharaoh and so many others. And the moment you read these words, all the previous statements of the great opponents of earlier prophets are conjured up before your view, Essentially, fundamentally, they're the same thing. The same statement, the same haughtiness, the same arrogance, the same false pride, and the same, determination to oppose truth. Now we turn to the most unsavory subject of Mawzoo. Although we have been giving reference to this repeatedly, because as I told, the Mawzoo are created on the path of righteousness. Because in reality, according to Islamic philosophy, the realities are positive. And every positive has a negative creation. So if there is a path of righteousness, there has to be a path of wrongdoing created from the same path. A shadow created from light. It's a beautiful philosophy of the Holy Quran, which which makes the Holy Quran to be far above every other teaching. All the fundamental truths have been mentioned in the Holy Quran in the most beautiful way. And this is one of them. That every value that is created is positive, and it is the lack of that value which creates some negative apparitions. What is substantial is Allah and His attributes. And what you see as falsehood and wrong things and wrong apparitions, they are not substantial, they are not real. They are just lack of acceptance of Allah's attributes. So this is how the design of Surah Fatiha is unfolded to us. It starts by counting the fundamental attributes of Allah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. These are the four attributes of Allah, within which fall all the attributes of Allah. None is outside them. And the Surah Fatiha ends up with Mawzub Rahim and Dawleen and so on and so forth. How can they be created from Allah, which is all the benign attributes, all the good attributes? So what these attributes do, they create the four munamalai, that is the four favored ones. And against four attributes of the Allah mentioned in Surah Fatiha, four favored ones are also mentioned in the Holy Quran in explanation of Siratul Lazina An'amta Alayhim. So this is how the whole debate is wound up. It starts with the four fundamental attributes of Allah, which create positive values. And those positive values are exhibited in the creation of four groups of favored ones of Allah. The greatest among them, the prophets; the second, Siddiq, the righteous ones, or the ultra-righteous ones, I should say. And then come the Shaheed, those who are witnesses. Witnesses in the sense that they begin to see God as if He's always present before them. And for His sake, no sacrifice is enough for them. No sacrifice is too big for them. And then come the Salihin. This is a very interesting study. What are Nabi mean in positive terms, not in these terms as opposed to the hostile forces, but in themselves as such. What are the prophets? Hazrat Masih Maud has discussed this subject so beautifully and so comprehensively that I have never come across any other Islamic writer who has done it so wonderfully and so much in depth and in detail. Many Muslim scholar previously has taken up this subject, but as I have told you, naturally he was a great man, no doubt, very great. Some of them were very great and very good people, but of course they were not the guided ones. The difference had to be when the writing of the Masih Maud and these other writings. But not only that, Hazrat Masih Maud has discussed in detail the Shuhada, the Siddiqeen, the Shuhada and the Salihin. And you will be surprised to learn that in the description you come across in Hazrat Masih Maud writing about Siddiqeen, a completely new light is thrown on the subject of Siddiqiyat, which you could never imagine before. And during the past, the previous 1300 years, that is previous to the time of Hazrat Masih Maud, not a single Muslim scholar could ever reach that depth, or that height, I should say. But of that later, inshallah. said earlier, Surah Fatiha has mentioned Allah not to be the one who shows wrath. Where is that attribute? Just read, we count the first four attributes. Rabbul Alameen, Rahman, Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. No wrath is mentioned at all. And the subject of zoning is not discussed at all in relation to Allah. As I said, this subject becomes complete with the mention of Siratul Lazina Anamta alayhim. And the remaining subject is discussed as a sort of appendix to this main subject and falls under the category Ghairul Maghdubi alayhim. It is outside the main subject. That is how we should look at it. You follow what I mean? That the main subject is that of positive values, of good things. And the bad things do not make an integral part of that subject at all. They are discussed as outside things. In fact, Surah Fatiha completes its message when it reaches the subject of Anamta alayhim. But by way of warning, Allah tells us that remain within the fold of this Surah Fatiha and do not transgress and fall into the category which lies outside the subject being discussed here. That is Ghairul Maghdubi alayhim. So that warning must have been very important warning, otherwise Allah shouldn't have given it in Surah Fatiha. Let's study in further detail what these Maghzub people are and Wazin are. Some of them have already been introduced to you by me and by them themselves in the modern history. But from the point of view of the Holy Quran, let's discuss it in principle. A reference to Maghdubi alayhim, many references to Maghdubi alayhim are given in the Holy Quran. I have chosen only a few to just illustrate the point, to make you understand what in reality is the crime which earns them this epithet of being Maghdubi alayhim. In Surah Baqarah, verse 62, we come across this statement: وَضُرِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الذِّلَّةُ وَالْمَسْكَنَةُ وَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يَكْفُرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَيَقْتُلُونَ النَّبِيِّينَ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ ذَلِكَ بِمَا عَصَوْا وَكَانُوا يَعْتَدُونَ. And they were smitten with abasement and destitution, and they incurred the wrath of Allah. That was because they rejected the signs of Allah and would kill the prophets unjustly. That was because they rebelled and transgressed. So as I mentioned earlier, the greatest crime in the sight of Allah is the opposition to prophets. If you don't oppose false prophets, that has never been mentioned as a crime in the Holy Quran anyway. And we should study this subject in the full context of this issue. Nowhere in the Holy Quran is man held responsible to God and answerable to Him if he hears somebody claim to be a prophet and he does not oppose him and does not kill him and does not destroy him. On the contrary, the attitude has been explained by me yesterday. Attitude of the Holy Quran has been explained by me yesterday. Now the issue of the prophets, if a prophet is the right one, then if you oppose him even by mistake, you will incur the greatest wrath of Allah. This is very clear. Why to indulge and why to in this and why to stand the greatest risk of Allah's wrath? Then the Holy Quran tells us in Surah 17, وَالَّذِينَ يُحَاجُّونَ فِي اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا اسْتُجِيبَ لَهُ حُجَّتُهُمْ ظَاهِرَةٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَعَلَيْهِمْ category of zolala, that is, you going astray and committing errors and so on. Do not incur the wrath of Allah. It is the greatest crimes which incur the wrath of Allah, the greatest among them. And those people are most unfortunate who have gone to that extent to earn the ghazab, that is wrath of Allah, despite the fact that He is Rahman and Rahim and Rabb and Maliki Yawmiddin. One of the crimes mentioned is وَالَّذِينَ يُحَاجُّونَ فِي اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا اسْتُجِيبَ لَهُ. There are two types of atheists. Those who are atheists because they are in reality agnostics. They don't know with certainty whether there is a God who exists or not. But they do not adopt a positive attitude against the belief in God. And they do not oppose this idea and do not frustrate the efforts of the believers to spread the faith in Allah. About them, nowhere in the Holy Quran you would find the word Mawzoob mentioned. But those who take it to themselves to oppose the faith in Allah, after Allah has been accepted by a large majority of people, by a large number of people, after the battle has been not totally but to a great degree won by the followers of truth. That is the subject matter being discussed here in this verse. وَالَّذِينَ يُحَاجُّونَ فِي اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا اسْتُجِيبَ لَهُ. The translators of the Holy Quran have always found themselves in difficulty in translating this bit, مَاسْتُجِيبَ لَهُ, after Allah has been accepted. This is the literal translation of this verse. Those who debate the issue of Allah's existence after Allah has been accepted, hujjatuhum dahiratun inda rabbihim. Their argument is futile in the sight of Allah. Now this has led people to difficulty because if taken at face value, it doesn't seem to hold water. And why should those people who have an argument against the existence of God be rejected because some other people have accepted Him? This is the main difficulty faced by the religious translators and commentators of the Holy Quran. Hujjatuhum da'ibatun inda rabbihim wa alayhim ghadabun wa lahum adhabun alim, adhabun shadid. Their argument is futile in the sight of Allah. Wa alayhim ghadabun wa lahum adhabun shadid. And on them is the wrath of Allah, and they would meet a most severe chastisement or punishment. Although this is not a direct concern, it is not directly related to the subject we are discussing, but because it is a difficult verse, so I have decided to explain it further to you. Otherwise, you will not be able to see the logic behind this argument, which is a very forceful argument put forward by the Holy Quran. Suppose you are not a believer in Allah. Suppose you are a simple man who did not understand the arguments put in favor of Allah's existence, and you were debating this issue with somebody who believes. And suddenly someone said to you, look here, now that so many people have believed in Allah, so your argument is finished. You have no right to stand now. Will you understand this? Will you be convinced because of this attitude and say no? There's nothing to do with this. But if you try to understand this verse in the light of the history of religion and though in the history of the believers, suffered for the sake of Allah, and in the history, in the light of the history of Shuhada, the so-called witnesses, then you will begin to understand the weight of this argument. This argument does not apply to a situation of a world like ours, where so many people have inherited the faith in Allah from their forefathers. Their belief in God is no argument against those who do not believe in Him. But this verse applies to the early period of struggle, where prophets and Siddiqeen and Shuhada and Salihin have started believing in Allah despite the greatest opposition to this belief. There must be something in that belief for whose sake they are offering such sacrifices with such perseverance. This is the argument. Prophets were not mad after all. Why did they abandon all the worldly comforts and worldly pleasures for the sake of a false idea? And they were the first witnesses. If there were no God, and you know they are not madmen, then how could a wise man abandon all the comforts of life and exchange these comforts for the most horrible punishment that could be meted out to him for the sake of somebody who does not exist? This requires either total madness or total ignorance. Now, if he remained one alone by himself, still you could say that he is a freak of nature. But he is followed and joined in this battle by Siddiqeen. Those who follow his footsteps offer everything they have in the path of Allah. Like Abu Bakr Siddiq did the same thing. And then followed by a great procession of Shuhada, one after the other, they offer their life for the sake of belief in God. But there must be something in that belief. They must be witnessing something. Otherwise, nobody can believe in absence, in something which is non-existent, and yet begin to offer sacrifices while he has not inherited that belief. This is the point which is being made by this verse. They are earning their faith in Allah, the belief in God. Not that they inherited that belief. If they had inherited, there is no argument against the atheists. The atheists have inherited atheism, and the believers have inherited belief in God. So what? But out of atheists, a society is being born, which is sacrificing everything they have for the sake of an unknown entity. So they must have seen something, so you can't reject Allah's existence outright like that. There is no question of Allah's existence. Now, because of these sacrifices, their argument has ultimately been rendered futile. So this is the greatest argument we can forward today in support of Allah's existence, and no one else but Ahmadis can do it today. It is we alone who are being born anew as believers. A new society is taking birth, who does not only believe in Allah but also believe in offering sacrifices for that belief, and is so truthful that no amount of trial frustrates their intentions and their ultimate determination to go on sacrificing in this path. If you spread, the spread of belief in Allah would spread. If you are annihilated, then the belief in Allah would be annihilated. This is what Allah cannot tolerate, and this is what Allah will not permit. And this is why Allah says, I will show my wrath upon those who oppose you. Because you are the essence of my belief. You are the very living belief in God. If you are permitted to go waste, then the belief in God it's an unsavory subject. The word rajam is used also regarding those people man kafara billahi min ba'di imani illa man ukriha wa qalbuhu mutma'innun bil iman walakin man sharaha bil kufri sadran fa alayhim ghadabun min Allah wa lahum adhabun azim. Those who renegade, who relinquish truth after having accepted it, those are the people on whom Allah's wrath would befall. And this is the path to which they are calling us. Exactly. They say, you think this is truth and you have accepted it, so go on believing it to be truth, yet abandon it and renounce it. They are inviting us to ghazab straightforwardly. How can we accept this one? But Allah is so benign. He knows there will be some people who will be weak among us, whose heart remains steadfast, but will be too weak to tolerate this torture at the hands of these cruel people. So Allah says they will be accepted. I will not show my wrath upon them if within their heart they remain believers. But وَلَكِنْ مَنْ شَرَحَ الْكُفْرِ صَدْرًا فَعَلَيْهِمْ غَضَبٌ مِنَ اللَّهِ. Those whose heart is real turn against truth after having accepted it, and who are satisfied with this path ultimately. It is those on whom I will show my wrath. Again, to break the covenant is a crime which is so enormous in the sight of Allah that Allah declares the punishment of that crime to be the wrath of Allah. فرجع موسى إلى قومه غضبان أسفا قال يا قوم ألم يئدكم ربكم وعدا حسنا أفطال عليكم العهد أم أردتم أن يحل عليكم غضب من ربكم فأخلفتم موعدي. Moses returned to his people indignant and said, O my people, did not your Lord promise you a gracious promise? Did then the appointed time appear too long to you? Or did you desire that wrath should descend upon you from your Lord, that you broke your promise to me? In light of this, you can imagine if a people break the covenant of prophets. That is not an ordinary covenant, that is a very special covenant and very specially emphasized covenant. Naturally, such people would incur and earn the wrath of Allah. Again, open rebellion, not ordinary passive crime or crimes of one's internal human weaknesses. They are not counted among crimes which incur the wrath of Allah. But crimes of rebellion, open hostility and belligerence to truth, these are crimes which incur Allah's wrath. So Allah tells us, بِسَمَ اشْتَرَى بِهِ أَنفُسُهُمْ أَنْ يَكْفُرُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ بَغْيًا أَنْ يُنَزِّلَ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ عَلَى مَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ فَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ عَلَى غَضَبٍ وَلِلْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. Even is that for which they have sold their souls, that they should disbelieve in what Allah has revealed, grudging that Allah should send down His grace on whomsoever of His servants He pleases. So they incur wrath upon wrath, and there is an humiliating chastisement for the disbelievers. The word bagyan has been translated in a way which is also permissible. But here bagyan should be translated more appropriately in the sense of rebellion. following the subject speaks of them. It says they incurred the wrath because they rebelled against the will of Allah and did not accept His prophets and His will imposed upon them. That is why, that is again the rejection of prophets in reality, which they did it so boldly and so shamefacedly that it earned them the wrath of Allah. Killing of a Muslim, a believer, is also one of the crimes which incurs Allah's wrath, and that is also being done in Pakistan and supported fully by the government of Pakistan, or the government of Pakistan. Now the result, the consequences of this ghazab. The consequences of this ghazab are of course ultimate punishment in the life after death. That is one. But on this earth, in this world, the character of such people is destroyed and mutilated and so much changed out of order that they do not deserve to be called human beings anymore. That is the ultimate punishment they will meet here on this earth before they die. So the Holy Quran tells us, مَنْ لَعَنَهُ اللَّهُ وَغَضِبَ عَلَيْهِ وَجَعَلَ مِنْهُمُ الْقِرَدَةَ وَالْخَنَازِيرَ وَعَبَدَ الطَّاغُوتَ أُولَئِكَ شَرٌّ مَكَانًا وَأَضَلُّ عَنْ سَوَاءِ السَّبِيلِ. Those who have incurred the wrath of Allah, these are the ones whom Allah has made qiradatam wal khanazira, has turned them into apes and swines, pigs. And these are the people who worship the Satan, the wrongdoer. Now this is the strongest language so far we have heard used against the opponents of truth. But now sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tells us that this would happen in the latter days. If there were no prophet to come, if no such rebellion was to be made, why should poor people in the end of the sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's ummah be treated like the rebellious people who oppose prophets have been treated earlier by Allah? And why should they be condemned in such strong terms as people earlier have been condemned, despite the fact that no prophet has been sent to them? Anand Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam tells us, all right. تكون في أمتي فضلة فيسير الناس إلى علمائهم فإذا هم قردة وخنازير. In the latter days, there would be great differences of opinion between one sect and another. And people would think that their ulama, their religious scholars would lead them to the right path. They would go to them and ask them about the correct course they should adopt. And lo, they will not find there human beings as their ulama. What they would find instead would be apes and swines. This is what I was referring to. So if this is the will of Allah and this